Hi everybody, this session is on colour selection and it's a follow-on from the class that we completed before. This is for anybody that's missed it or would like to do a recap. So this is looking at Aveda colour selection. Obviously we are Gina Conway Academy that use Aveda colours. If you are an Aveda salon or you're an apprentice within an Aveda salon, I recommend that you go to the Aveda Pure Pro website where we took some of these case studies and some of the pictures as well. There's lots of interactive activities for you to complete. Everyone within Gina Conway, we have given you Nearpod codes. So what you'll need to do during this presentation is if you can pause it, go over to your Nearpod to then complete the activities. So let's get started. No problems with this. Go to the next slide. Here we go. Basics. What are the three primary colours? We need to then know what are the three secondary colours and how are secondary colours made. So in a minute, we're going to look at the colour star. So this is going to help you with your colour selection. In fact, your colour star is even when you come to the most advanced colouring techniques within colour correction, you're still going to come back to your colour star no matter what. So we're going to look at what the three primary colours. These three primary colours are then mixed to make secondary colours. And then we can neutralise these colours. So let's have a look at this. So on the left is an example of the colour star. So the rhyme to remember would be Richard of York gave battle in vain, to remember which order that they go in. So we've got the Richard, we've got the orange, the York here. So for an example, if a colour is red, we wanted to neutralise red, we could put green on it to neutralise that. If a colour is orange, we can put blue on to neutralise that and vice versa. And if a colour is yellow, we can put purple on it and that will neutralise it. So this is the basics of the colour star, and this is relevant across all product brands, not just Aveda. Within Aveda itself, you have the different tones on here on the right. With Aveda colour products, you can mix and measure your outcomes. So you can mix and measure your colours and tailor them depending on the outcome you want. So instead of like most product companies, the colours are already made for you, these ones you can actually change around a little bit, so you can make them a bit more bespoke to wherever your guest, whatever your colour your guest wants. So your full spectrum range of your different tones are seen here. Your Demi Plus range, which is what we'll look at within another session, they're your tones here. So for an example, we've got our yellow orange here in the full spectrum range. So we can see that's these two colours of our yellow and orange mixed together there. We do have pure pigments as well. So pure pigments being just the pigment on their own. And that would be, for instance, the pure red here. We've got our natural series here. Our blue violet, our blue green, our yellow orange, our red orange, and our dark violet red. So these are our darker bases, and then anything on a lighter base we would use here, which is our light range. So for instance, light natural. We're going to look at levels very shortly. But the difference being that anything on a 7 to a 10, which is a lighter colour, so say for instance 10 being the lightest you can be, 1 being the darkest, so that would be black. So anything from these kind of range onwards, you're going to use the light tones, and anything below a level 7, you're going to use the dark tones. So we looked at the colour star just then. We then have the Aveda colour wheel. So every manufacturers will have their own version of it. So this is Aveda's. So here we can see we've got our colour wheel around here. The only difference is that their red is this way, but there's no difference if you can see that the red still neutralises the green. As I mentioned earlier on, we've got the tones here. So we have our darker bases in the middle. So this means the level of hue and saturation. So there's a lot more yellow and orange pigment on a dark than there is a light. As we come out to this range here, our pastel toners have even less. And that's because of, if you think about the lighter the hair, you probably wouldn't want as much tone in there, because you're going to end up, for instance, if you were to put a violet on someone that's very, very blonde, your violet will neutralize your yellow really well, but you don't necessarily want the hair to be too violet. So if you're toning with the pastel toners along here, you'll get some violet, but not too much. So yeah, you've got your Aveda color wheel here. So you'll always need to refer back to this whenever you're doing your case studies. So I mentioned a minute ago, we have levels of how light or dark the hair is. So we've got one, as I mentioned down here, being the darkest, which is black. And we have 10 here, which has been the lightest, which is lightest blonde. The good news is this is the ICC, so it's the International Colour Chart. So it doesn't matter if you're using L'Oreal, Wella, if you're in the UK, if you're in America, there'll be no difference. That a level 6 will always be a level 6 dark blonde. What you might want to do actually is a little activity at home, have a look at what your natural base is. So if you look at your natural colour, you can always tell this by going just underneath the crown. So obviously you can't do that on yourself, but whenever you're identifying natural base on any of your guests, you want to go just below the crown and have a look at within that area there. Then you can identify the natural level of your guest's hair. Then you have your natural remaining pigment. So that means the color which comes through whenever you're lightening the hair. So for an example, if someone's very dark and they're going on holiday, they may find they're having some kind of red reflex coming through. If you're more brown hair, you may see that there's sometimes an orangey type of tone that comes through. So this is what happens whenever we're exposing the hair to a lightening product or exposing it to anything where the hair is going lighter. We will be exposing the natural remaining pigment. Which will give you a very natural kind of sun-kissed result. For instance, if you were going from a level 6 up to a level 9, you know, and you're putting colour on, you're going 3 shades lighter, 6, 7, 9, yeah. You'd have your yellow tone there, but you may not want yellow tone. So that depending on the outcome with your guest. So you may, in this case, need to neutralise that with a violet tone. Same thing, for instance, if you're lifting the hair from a darker base of a 5, you may decide to go 2 levels lighter up to a level 7, which is a medium blonde. We can then see here with that medium blonde, we're going to have an orange natural remaining pigment within that. And again, if your client wants quite a warm blonde, fine. If they don't like that and they prefer the more ash colours or the more neutral tone, we're going to need to add some blue into there. So that's how it works with the natural remaining pigment. So you, as I mentioned before, you need to decide and have that conversation, have that consultation with your guest to decide, do they want to enhance their tone? Are they happy to refine it? Do they want to enhance it? So our cooler colours here will either neutralize or refine. So you may wish to completely knock out any of the warm tone. You may wish to reduce some of it. You may wish to enhance it. So looking back to a minute ago, we said we had someone with a level base of a 5 and they wanted to go 2 levels lighter. So we know there's going to be quite a lot of warmth already coming through, but they may want it even more warmer. They may want it like a true gold. They really like their golden tones or their copper tones. So we may wish to enhance it. So we mentioned just before about going lighter. Any colour is going to need a developer or a peroxide in order for that to last longer than 8 washes. So even a demi plus range or your quasi-permanent range, which is known as, still need a developer even if it's very low. So a permanent colour works within the hair is the peroxide is what makes the hair lift, but it's also what makes the cuticle swell. So the cuticles is what's on the outside of the hair. So it gets them to swell. What happens with permanent colour is small little pigments of colour go into the hair, and then when they mix with the peroxide, after half an hour, they expand and get larger and they get trapped into the hair. So the higher the level of lift, the higher the volume of peroxide that we need. So oxygen being the active ingredient within there. So for instance, at one level of lift, we would use 10 volume, 2, 20 volume, 3, 30 volume, and 4, 40 volume. Let's go to the next one. So very shortly, you would need to pause what I'm saying here. So you move over to your Nearpod and complete these case studies now. So the first one would be, just so you know, NB means natural base. So what is the guest's natural base? So here we can see it's a 4, and the target shade here is a 6. So 6N. So here we can see that guest wants a natural result. They want a truly natural. So that means they don't want any warmth. So whenever you're doing these case studies, if you're seeing an N there, it means that they don't want warmth in the hair. So you're going to need to neutralize it. So what you're tasked to do when you come over to your Nearpod will be to put in there natural base 4, target shade 6N, levels of lift, which is 2. So we're going to use 20 volt for 2 levels of lift. And then all you need to put under there is what the underlying pigment of a 6 is. And then do you need to neutralize it or not? So I'll leave you to do that. So once you pause me, you can put your Nearpod. So once you've now completed that, we're now going to look at mixing and measuring to the next step. So just before I mentioned about our tones, so here we have our pure tones here, which is our, for instance, we've got the light yellow orange. We have our pure pigment range, and these, instead of having a mixture, they'll just be either pure violet or pure red. You would only use these on darker hair. So on a base of a 3 to a 6, you would use these type of tones. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, we have our pastel tones, and these are what we use with our high lift range. And therefore, so high lift being high lift blondes, they're very light blondes. So we've got, these are the different types of free pigments that we have within our full spectrum permanent range. And then here's your tone guidelines. So as I mentioned before, they are guidelines. For the sake of your case studies that you complete, I'd like you to keep to these guidelines because you need to learn the rules first before you can start to play around and adjust them. So for the sake of all your case studies, do stick to these tonal guidelines. Within this session, we're looking at full spectrum permanent range. And so it works here. So we've got anything from a light, as I mentioned before, anything from a 10 to a 7. We're going to go up in 2s. So it's 2, 4, 6, 8. This is how we formulate. So for instance, 2 grams on a base of a 10. So then it's going to go 2. Then as soon as you go a little bit darker, you add another 2. So 4, then 6, then 8. So this is all light. So for instance, light YO would be here. As soon as I come to a 6, I then start using dark YO. And that would be across the same. So it could be dark NN, dark OR. So again, it's going to go 2, 4, 6, and 8. Anything on a base of a 1 to a 2, you can add tone, but there's really not a lot of point because the hair is so dark at that level. We're not going to see the true tonal value come through. We'll go on to a Demi Plus in another session, but just so you know, your Demi Plus range is double of that. So it's 4, 8, 12, 16. This is how we gloss and sheen, for instance. This is also true when with our intense base range. So if you wanted your reds, and we're going to look at that within this PowerPoint, you would follow the double range. So that's the same as the Demi Plus. But we will look at the Demi Plus within a separate session. And then finally, we have our pastel blondes. And for our pastel blondes, our standard formula is always going to be adding 4 grams within a natural blonde, 2 grams if you want a soft, or 8 grams if you want a strong. So remember before I said our pastel blonde, These are as our lightest colours. So these are our what's known as ELC, or our extra lightning cream. So as a standard formula, you're going to be using 4 grams. But if you wanted someone to be very ash blonde, for instance, you may decide to go for 8. Again, for the case studies, we're going to stick to the 4. I mentioned just before there are levels of lift and our color catalyst, or which is also known as our peroxide, what we will use with our developer, sorry, within our colors. But your level of processing time will vary depending on your levels of lift. So for instance, if we wanted 2 levels of lift here, we would be using we would use 20 vol for 30 minutes. And then it's going to go up to 40 minutes if you're using 30 vol, or 45 minutes if we want to get 4 levels of lift. Our 5 volume and our 10 volume, generally speaking, you would use these more with your Demi Plus range, although you may decide if you're only getting 1 level of lift or you're going darker with your full spectrum, you would go for your 10 volume. Okay, so looking at a case study now. So very shortly, again, you need to pause yourself to complete the case study over onto Nearpod. So first, what we need to do here is identify the natural base and level. And then, so Sally, which is our guest here, she would like a golden tone that's 2 shades lighter than her natural base and level. So she wants to go 2 shades lighter. So you'll need to put down on your Nearpod task very shortly the natural base, her target shade, and then her levels of lift, what her natural remaining pigment is, and then finally your formula, what you're going to use. So if you want to pause me now, and then I will go over the answers once you've completed. And to consolidate what we just did there. So we've identified that the natural base is a base 7. She wants to go 2 shades lighter and golden. So we know that's 7, 8, 9. So that's 2 levels of lift here. And she wants to have a yellow orange, a 9YO, based on the fact she wants to have her hair natural and but golden. As mentioned, 2 levels of lift here. Her natural remaining pigment is based on what we have on a 9. So we've lifted it up to a 9. Go back to your slides to see what is a 9. So it's going to come out at a yellow. And then our formula for that is going to be 40 grams of 7N. By the way, when it comes to formulas, you're always going to be basing this on 40 grams of your color. So your base is going to be 7N here. No, sorry, I got that wrong. Where are we? So 40 grams of 7N. So that's actually 9N, my apologies. So formula would be 40 grams of 9N and 4 grams of light YO. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if we're going to use 40 grams of our base, we're also going to use 40 grams of our color catalyst or our developer. So that's going to be 40 grams of 20 vol. And then we're going to leave that on the hair to process for 30 minutes. And here are some other case studies. So I'll leave you to complete these ones on your Nearpod. But just give you another example. Jenny would like a light copper red that is 3 shades lighter than her natural base. So here, again, you're going to need to identify what her natural base level is, what her target shade is, how many levels of lift that's going to be, the natural remaining pigment, and then what formula will you use to complete that. And then your other case study is meeting Rebecca. So Rebecca would like a natural color that is 2 shades lighter, but doesn't like any warm tones. So she really hates any kind of reds or coppers or orangey, any kind of warmth at all. So natural base is a 4. And then we need to identify what her target shade is. So she wants to go 2 shades lighter. So how many levels of lift, as we just mentioned then. So therefore, what peroxide strength are you going to need to use? What is the natural remaining pigment? And then what is the formula for that? So within the Aveda full spectrum permanent range, you can customize your colors depending on the outcome that you want. So here, for instance, on the left, we have our natural range. So these are the products we were just looking at a minute ago, if you want to get the more natural kind of colors. We have our intense base range here. So for your more vibrant reds or your vibrant coppers. We have our personalized colors here. So you may wish to create very vibrant colors, bespoke colors, fashion colors. So you got the option there. And then you also have your blonde range here, which is your high lift range. So you can choose which type of product you want, depending on the different type of range of looks that you want to achieve. So we do that by using these different types of colors within the range. So we looked already at the natural series. So this would be the 1N to 10N with your tone. The intense base is what we're going to look at very shortly. And that's basically, you just add this intense base in with your formula if you want to get a more brighter, vibrant result. Our ELC, which is our extra lifting cream, which is used for our blonde range, for very blonde hair up to 5 levels of lift. And then our universal 0N is for our fashion colors, if we want to just create more vibrant tone. A note here when you are working with grey hair coverage. So you have 2 formulas here. So if you want to get a natural coverage, so this may be somebody's that's got a few grey hair, but it's not that intense. You would use exactly the same formula as normal. So your 40 grams of your natural series, anything from 0 to 8 grams of your tone. You don't need to add any natural. The only difference is you're going to process this for 45 minutes. An important note here, if you want to ensure you're getting grey coverage, you will need to ensure you're using 20 volume is your color catalyst or your peroxide. So carry on your formula as normal for a natural coverage, just add on an extra 15 minutes. So that would be 45 minutes development time. However, if you have a client which has a bit more grey hair, or there's quite resistant grey hair and their priority, they have to ensure they have that coverage, you're going to add in something of the natural series. So for instance, you may have 40 grams of your 7N, and whatever base you're going to add the same level. So say for instance, you've got 40 grams of 7N, or say, let's say 9N, and then you're going to use in your tones, you may use 4 grams of your light YO, and then you're going to use also 4 grams of your light natural. So you're going to match whatever you put in your tone, you're going to match with your natural range. Again, 40 milliliters of your peroxide, and then processing time is going to be 30 minutes. So using what we just discussed there, let's revisit Rebecca. This time Rebecca's got some grey hair, but quite a bit of it. So identifying her natural bases of 4, she would like to go 2 shades lighter to achieve the maximum grey coverage. And she hasn't changed, she still doesn't like any warm tones. So we need to identify a natural base, which we have already, which is a 4. We need to say what the target shade is going to be, how many levels of lift, what the natural remaining pigment is on there, and then what formula will be used. So if you're about to go over to your Nearpod, if you'd like to pause this, complete the task, unpause it, and then I'm going to go through the answers. So let's look at Rebecca. So she's a natural base of a 4. She wants 2 shades lighter with a maximum coverage. So that's going to be a 6N, and that's 2 levels of lift. Her natural remaining pigment on the base of a 6 is going to be a red-orange. So if I put red-orange on there, sorry, if I put on a 6N only, we're going to see some of that red-orange come through. So we need to neutralize that. So therefore, we're going to use 2 grams of dark BG. So our blue-green to neutralize the red and the orange in there. But we're also going to add in there 2 grams of dark NN. because we want to ensure we get that grey hair coverage. 20 vol is our developer or our color catalyst, and we're going to leave it on there for 30 minutes. Okay, over to our intense base range now. So with our intense red results, so this would be if someone's pointing to the more vibrant colors. They don't just want like an orange red, for instance, they want a very bright one. So there's two options here. We've either got the bright or we have the intense. So obviously the intense being the strongest one that we can use. How this works is we're going to add some intense base into it. So you're still going to use, for instance, an 8N. So if the target color is an 8OR, 8N is still going to be used, but we're going to use half of it. So we're going to do 20 grams of that and then 20 grams of our intense base. I mentioned earlier that your tones when using your for your bright intense base colors will be double. So instead of 2, you would start at 4. So do bear that in mind when it comes to the case studies. And then it's going to be still equal amounts of 40. So because 20 of natural and 20 of intense base will work out at 40. However, if you've got a guest that wants it very, very intense, you would go for only 10 grams of your natural color and then 30 grams of your intense base. And again, it's the same pigment, so it's going to be double the amount. And again, it's still 40 mils of your peroxide, so it's still a 1-to-1 ratio in total because 10 plus 30 equals 40. Okay, so let's put this into practice now. So let's meet Marsha. We will need to identify Marsha's natural base and level. I've got a bit of a typo here, my apologies. Marsha, it should say Marsha. So Marsha would like a bright light copper red tone. So the key thing is here, she wants it bright. And it's 3 shades lighter than her natural base. So, and level. So again, go through the steps here. You can pause me. And when you're ready and you've completed the case study, unpause me, and then we'll go through the answers. Okay, so here we go. So we've got, as I say, Marsha, my apologies about the typo. She wants to do a bright light copper. So natural base, we can see here is a 6. She wants to go 3 levels lighter, so 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's taking us up to a 9. She wants a 9 orange red, but bright. Her natural remaining pigment is going to be yellow. So that's actually going to work really well because it's already going to have a yellowy tone. So us putting an orangey red on top of that is going to help sit quite nicely. Then when we're coming to our formula, so we're going to use half of 9N, so 20 grams of 9N, 20 grams of intense base. Because it's on a base of a 9, it's going to be 8 grams. So 8 grams of light OR and 40 milliliters of 30 vol because we're getting 3 levels of lift, and we're going to develop that for 40 minutes. Then we have our ELC, which is our extra lightning cream range or high lift blondes. So with this, we'll create up to 5 levels of lift. If you use it on its own, it will give you more a soft, creamy result. And if you use ELC with a pastel tone, it will give you a tonal quality. They will also blend up to 25% of your hair. So as a guideline with your peroxide strengths, for levels of lift of 4, you're going to mix it with 30 volume for 30 minutes. If you mix it with 40 volume for 5 levels of lift, your processing time is going to be 45 minutes. Your guidelines for mixing this up, so we've got 40 grams of ELC, 0 to 8, as I mentioned earlier on, depending on if you want it the standard, soft, or a stronger tone. And with this one, it's 2 parts. So instead of, it's going to be double with your peroxide strength. With your peroxide. So for instance, 40 here we can see is going to be 80. If you use 20, you'll be using 40. So it is double when you're using your ELC range. So there is more peroxide than there is the tint. You will find for this reason it's slightly more runny, so you may wish to add some of the Aveda viscosity within there to thicken up your product if you're doing things like highlight application. So over to a case study. So we're going to meet Georgia. Her natural bases are 5. She would like an ash tone that's quite light. So again, if you can complete these steps, put me on pause, complete the activity within Nearpod, unpausing when you're ready, and then we'll go through the answers together. So natural bases are 5. Sorry, what's wrong here? Be 4 levels of lift. So sorry, we could either say it's a 5 or a 6. I've done a bit of an error here. So natural base will be 6. Target shade, check my formulas on here then as well. 45. Okay, sorry, we'll say it's a 5. So natural base is a 5. Our target shade is a 10. So we've got our maximum levels of lift there. Our natural remaining pigment up there is a pale yellow. So our formula will be 40 milliliters of ELC, 40 grams of our pastel blue, and 80 grams of our 40 vol. You may have come up with a slightly different formula. So what would work really well is also using your pastel V, your pastel violet. The reason for that, if you think about it, pastel violet is the violet will neutralize a yellow tone. So technically speaking, we would have a yellow there. However, because of her hair was previously very dark on a 5 or a 6, depending on what we've identified there, you will find that there's still going to be quite a lot of that orangey pigment coming through. So in this case, the pastel blue would probably be a better one to use. But when your answers, you could use either or. So it could be pastel blue or pastel violet, or you may wish to use both. So you could, for instance, use 2 grams of your pastel blue and 2 grams of your pastel violet within there. So as I say, you can customize them and you can change them. So your formulas may be slightly different to mine, but as long as you're using the theory behind it, then that's fine. And then lastly, we have our 0N range here. So our universal 0N is there to add shine or gloss. It's also refreshes and balances color. It will help to increase translucency, and it will decrease lifting power. So we would use this range. Basically, there's no color. It's practically colorless what's in here. So you would use that purely if you're doing like a shine or a gloss, or if you purely want a tone, you didn't want to have any base or anything in there, you'd replace your base with your full spectrum. So this is when you can start to, get more creative colors. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you all shortly. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.